Good morning, everyone.
Good morning.
My name is Javert Clark, and today it brings us great pleasure to bring to you our reflection of the residential housing project. We want to thank each and every one of you for allowing us to present to you today. Today, we will give you an overview of the background of our project. We're going to tell you exactly what SIM4 project is and what it means to us. We'll tell you who we are as a team and why we did what we did. We'll also go into the pre-play and trial phases. We'll tell you our strategies. We'll also tell you what went right and what went wrong. We'll then take you through all rounds from round 1 through round 12. We'll then tell you also what went wrong in these rounds and our performance throughout these rounds. You will also get a decision-making process. What we did, what we didn't do. We'll share everything with you today. And at the end, we'll also have our key turning points followed by our decision-making process. We'll also follow it up with our conclusion. And at the end, you can ask us any questions as we'll be more than happy to assist. Now, without further ado, I'm going to welcome Jose, and Jose is going to tell you a detailed description of exactly what the SIM4 project is.
Thank you, Mr. Clark, for that fine introduction. Before we go into the juicy details of what we did and why we accomplished what we accomplished during this simulation, because I'm sure most of you are dying to know what we did. Allow me a few minutes to just talk about what's the background behind the SIM4 project's software and why it is important for us to do this kind of exercises during this class. So what is SIM4 projects? SIM4 projects is basically a web-based computer simulation software that has been specifically designed to teach and enhance and work on skills, theory, concepts that we have learned throughout this class that Paul has been so gracious to teach us. Some of the things that we need to apply to understand this simulation are the concepts that we have learned during this class. This tool is just one of a new wave of educational tools that their objective is to bring project management theory into practice. And they provide a clear advantage over the old empirical learning that most project managers beforehand had to use. Just a few decades ago, new project managers like us had to rely upon learning on the job. In other words, if you were a new project manager back then, you will probably get a project, some deadline, some resources, and a good luck. You have to see what you do. But not anymore, because of tools like this and the PMI, body of knowledge, and all this stuff. This particular simulation was created by Dr. Pinto and Dr. Parenti, both leading figures in the management theory research from Penn State University. And their vision was to create a framework from which students like us could take project decisions and see how those decisions affected the project. But most importantly, to create a framework from which we as students could make mistakes, project mistakes, and how we could analyze those mistakes and learn from them. This is of particular interest for us because we don't want to be wasting thousands of dollars down the drain because of mistakes, and no boss, no sponsor is going to accept your excuse that, oh, I was just learning, and that's why I made mistakes. So that's why it's of particular interest for us. The way the simulation is set up for a classroom setting like us is to have teams compete against each other and rank them depending on their performance. So just that brings me to my team. Just allow me to quickly introduce ourselves. We have Andrea Jimenez. She's an assistant engineer from Colombia. She has an IT consultancy and project management experience. We have Javert Clark. He's a computer scientist with an IT and customer service management experience. Myself, I have a Bachelor of Science in Engineering with an aviation maintenance and project support experience. And last but not least, Noara Alemar. She's an assistant and computer engineer from the Dominican Republic. She has a banking and IT project management experience. Now with the juicy stuff. The pre-play and trial strategy was the first stage of the simulation, as you know. In this stage, the main thing for everyone was to learn how to use the software, the game, how to play the game. So, and that's best accomplished by doing an active trial and error approach. That's just basically clicking on stuff and seeing what happens. Since the most important objective of the pre-play was to hire and to bid on and hire the team that was going to help you during the first stages of the game. One of the first decisions that we took as a team was the decision to bid between no less than 5% and no more than 12% over the asking price of all resources. This approach gave us very good results. More than 90% of the times we actually acquired the resources that we aimed for. As an example, I can mention Mr. Carl Brown. He was our project manager. We hired him with a rate of 130 over his asking price of 123. That's a little bit less than 6% over his asking price, or his asking rate. And even though, as you can see, his stats were average, he was able to give us a pretty consistent performance of more than 80% efficiency during the entirety of the game, and that fact gave us a big advantage throughout the game. Something else that was very important for us during the pre-play and trials was understanding the first round activities. One particular task that proved to be a challenge for us was the underground utility installation. First, we thought that the plumber was the most effective resource for this activity, but turns out, and we learned through the trials that Paul was so gracious to give us after the pre-play, that was actually the electrician the most effective resource for this task. Also of great importance during the pre-play was the identification of critical path activities and the identification of their predecessors and successors. All of this is just to make sure that you can pre-plan ahead to have the most effective team that you can get. So, what went right at the end of the pre-play and trials? Everything was said and done. What went right for us? First, even though, as I'll mention later, we didn't end up with the most ideal team, but with the resources that we have secured, we did the best that we could with them. For example, I can mention that we had the surveyor help the project manager in the developing estimate task. Thank you, Dan. That gave us really good results, at least in schedule, in what schedule prefers. Also, the pre-play stage and the trials gave us a really good chance to play around and tweak the different managerial decisions that can be taken in the game. We found that most of those decisions are not really cost effective, but we did find that the right combination of managerial decisions combined with a good cost management and a good schedule management yields a very good stakeholder satisfaction, and that's what we like to call our secret formula. And you can see that because in 8 of the 12th round we got 100% stakeholder satisfaction. And most importantly, from the pre-play, we got that after everything was said and done, we became more comfortable playing the game and in predicting what the results of our decisions will be. So since in this stage we were all learning how to play the game, how to play the simulation, a lot of things went wrong, as was expected. But some of the things that we can mention, first, the bench penalty. At first we tried our best to avoid the dreaded bench penalty by assigning resources to all the tasks possible. Without realizing that if you do that, sometimes, most of the times, you actually end up paying more for those additional resources than the actual cost of the penalty. So from that moment on, we knew that we had to do a cost versus bench penalty analysis every time that we try to avoid the bench penalty. Number two, big mistake, I don't recommend this. We accidentally fired a critical resource, actually a paving and concrete contractor that we were going to use during the first round. We fired him by mistake. So after that we learned that not only the decisions that had to be taken by the team, but also the actual actions had to be taken and being supervised by the whole team. Our third biggest mistake, or the most important actually, that we had is that at the end of the pre-play, we ended up with less than an ideal team. Specifically, we had only one project manager, and we also hired a plumber that we actually didn't need. This we learned throughout the simulation process, and the cause of this was not only that we were learning at this stage, but also that we had a poor understanding of the mechanics of the game. So from that moment on, we improved our communication strategy. So what was the outcome of all of this? If we have to summarize our outcomes for after the pre-play and trial stages, we had a good understanding of the high level mechanics of the game and how the different decisions will impact our ranking. From that, we learned a few lessons. As I talked about, I also can mention another lesson that we had, that we learned that assigning less than 100% allocation for resources is not a very good idea. So from that moment on, we always assign 100% allocation. And using those, the understanding and the learning, we could improve our performance over time. As you can see on this table, and this is just the trial rounds. You can see that we went from the 7th place to the 2nd. And we were able to maintain this pattern, this trend over time during the rest of the game. But for that, I'm going to have Andrea explain us how we did.
Thank you, Jose. Well, based on the information that Jose just shared with us, it's time now to take a look at the performance, considering the lessons learned and the outcomes from the pre-play and trial rounds. Well, this table shows our performance throughout the 12 rounds in the simulation, in terms of time, cost, functionality, and stakeholders. This table also shows the overall percentage of performance and the final rank. We can describe our performance as consistent, adaptive, and under control. First of all, consistent. Consistent means always happening in a similar, and in this case, positive way. So as you can see, we won 8 of 12 rounds in the competition. And the 4 rounds that we didn't win, we ranked only 2nd. So this performance allowed us to rank first in the general table. That's the reason why we can say our performance was consistent and was also positive. Adaptive. Adaptive is related to having the ability or the skills to change and suit according to different situations, to different circumstances. So in our case, we didn't start the competition with the team we wanted. However, we were able to make wiser and great decisions, and we ranked 2nd in the competition. Another scenario when we applied adaptability was where we didn't get the resources, the priority resources we bid on. However, we overcome the situation by making right decisions. And the most important thing here, the most relevant point according to us, is under control. We consider that we have the project under control at all moments. Let's reflect a little bit, guys. Let's say that if you lose the competition or if you fail in a couple of rounds and you don't know why, this is a problem. But if you win the competition or if you succeed in a couple of rounds and you don't know why either, this is even worse. So for us, we ensure that we have the control of all the projects since the beginning. We start in the second position because we didn't have the proper team. So we knew that it was not possible for us to get the first position at the beginning. However, we also knew that it would take us around 3 rounds to take the lead. And it was exactly what happened. In the round number 4, we took the lead. And we kept this lead for 3 rounds more. What happened in the round number 7? In the round number 7, we had to make some adjustments on cost. We knew that these adjustments were going to cost us the first position. However, we were confident that after that, we were going to have a solid first position. And it was exactly what happened. So we can say that if the game has 20 rounds, we would be still confident about keeping the first position, unlike other opinions. Well, what was our strategy? Our strategy was based on 3 key main points: planning, documentation, and continuous analysis. First of all, planning. The first thing we did was we all read the Sim for Projects manual. We highlight similar or important points, we discuss these points, and we share this information as a team. Then we contacted a subject matter expert. In fact, it was a friend, it was only a call, but it was a person who knew our construction, so we wanted to make sure we were assigning the proper resource to the proper activities. Gantt chart. We checked the Gantt chart since the beginning, since round number 1, because if you realize it, in the Sim for Projects website, the activities were organized alphabetically, so we needed a chronological vision from the Gantt chart. And finally, resource acquisition. We planned acquisitions of all the resources since round number 1. So of course, this acquisition changed during the time. However, this acquisition allowed us to get a deeper understanding about what the project was about since the beginning. Documentation. We had a perfectly organized file with every single activity per round. We highlight critical path activities and we link predecessors and successors to make sure about the allocation of resources. Continuous analysis. We had tons of tables. We compared cost, the estimate cost, with the money that we actually spent per each round. We did the same with time. We took all the resources from the pool and we compared key skills and key indicators. So it allowed us to make right decisions. And finally, this is part of our secret formula. We were able to forecast the future performance of the general project. So this is pretty much the theory of our formula. Let's take a look now at what we actually did with this formula in the key turning points.
Thank you, Andre. Good morning, class. Now we're going to see the round trend and which were the key turning points throughout the 12 periods of the rounds. As we mentioned before, for the first 3 rounds, we don't have the perfect team. However, in round 4, we were able to acquire better resources and we got the first place for the first time. So, in this round, we have 7 activities. 6 of those were on the critical path, and 5 of those were performed by road carpenters. So, in this round, we assigned 2 road carpenters of the critical path and start to bid between 10 and 15 above of the standard rate. We start to spend more money for acquire better resources. The average performance of the resources was average, but because they were better, they performed 100% in time, and our cost was 82%. And we apply our secret formula for the stakeholders, and we got the 91%. As a team, we decide to improve time despite increasing costs. This worked for us until period 6. We kept the first place in round 4, 5, and 6. But in period 7, we bid for the best resources, the more skilled ones, the number 1. And those resources doesn't have a good performance. Let's see the details. We got 8 activities in this round. Only 1 activity was in the critical path. That activity was a huge one because it had 128 hours, and it must be performed for the paving contractor. We got Mike Perez. He was the most skilled one, and we paid more than 20% above his standard rate. And his performance was only 65%. Moreover, we also acquired a drywall specialist. His name was Iwo Santana. We paid him 15% more than the standard rate, and he had even a lower performance of 61%. As you can see, this cost, the result was that we didn't reach the time, they both extended in the time, and obviously that cost us more money, and the cost value was 72. These values weren't the expected one, and we ranked in second place, only for 1 point of difference between group 8. We also applied the secret formula, and you can see here we get the 100%. To this round, until the 12th, we got the 100% in stakeholders always. After this round, we decided 3 things. First, because the low performance and the higher cost, we're going to fire Mike Perez and the next round. Second, we are going to keep on with the secret formula because it's resolved perfectly. And third, as a team, we have to review and adapt our strategy to get the first place again in the next rounds. Now, Jaber is going to explain the key turning point for round 8.
Thank you, Namara. Now, as you can see here in round 8, I'm Jamaican, and Jamaican is known for running, sprinting. We have the fastest man and woman in the world, fastest teenagers and fastest adults. Now, we can relate this to sprinting. So in sprinting, there is 2 phases, 2 main phases. You have your drive phase, which is the initial phase, where your head is down and you're going through the air. That's what we were doing in the first couple of rounds. We were focusing on understanding the software, on improving our grasp. We went into transition at round 7, where we gave up cost for time. We anticipated this, we knew this would happen. But here at round 8, this is what athletes call the high performance mode. This is where your chest is high and you keep sprinting. This is where you don't look back. And this is where we were here. I know it may seem overly confident now, but at this moment, we knew we won the competition. Right after round 8, we knew we would win all rounds going forward. Now, how did we know this? Let's take a look at how. Now, 7 of the 8 activities in the 8th round were on the critical path. So we knew we had to secure the best resource. Now, as Namara mentioned, we have 2 strategies. We have our winning strategy, and we have our secret formula. We decided to combine both strategies. As can be seen here, we assigned our best resource to the critical path. But how did we get these best resource? Well, here is the winning formula. We'll explain it to you. We bid 5% on the best resources in the table. And we bid 10% on the second best resource. And that's what allowed us to secure the best resources overall. But there was something funny also going on. We realized that the second best resource was more competitive. Most persons were bidding on the mediocre persons, bidding more money for the second best resource and lower. So we were able to secure the best resource most times for a very low cost compared to the second best resource. Now, as you can see here, we also were able, because in this round we were securing the painter and drywall specialist. We were able to assign them to the critical path activities if we wanted, or fire them. So we were able to employ crashing if we wanted, or we can fire them. Now, if we fired somebody, it didn't really give us a big impact because we had our secret formula for stakeholder happiness that we could always use to bring it up to 100%. So that wasn't a worry for us. Now, if we look at this table here, we will see that winning formula in action. As you can see here, we bid on 2 plumbers and 2 pavement and concrete contractors. What did this do? This ensured that we didn't have any much risk. So if we didn't get one, we'd at least have another one to subsidize. And also, as you can see here, the difference between what we were paying for the second best and the best resources in the field is marginal, by $1. Sometimes we even got them cheaper than the second best resource. So we found that very, very interesting. Now, what went right and what went wrong? Now, several things went right. Well, a few things did go wrong. Now, let's review what went right throughout these rounds. As we can see here, we became confident and comfortable in our knowledge. We read so much, we did so much trial and error in the pre-play stages that we were confident in the software. Initially, we thought Sim4 project was a simple tool. We thought, oh, you know, it's not that advanced. But once we were about round 3, round 4, we realized how complex it was. We started to appreciate the software for what it was. We also we were able to predict the plans of other team members. I know you're saying, well, how did we do that? We kept a table of all teams. So we monitored what we did in each round, we calculated, and we tried to predict, based on our educated guesses, exactly what each team would do for each round. In round 8, this became very well. We were able to literally tell what other teams were going to do based on your previous actions. So we found that very interesting. Now, of course, our winning strategy, and that's of course bidding 5% on the best resource and 10% on the second best resource, combined with our secret formula for stakeholder happiness, it paid off marvelously for us. Now, things did go wrong, a few things. More things went right than went wrong. One of the things that went wrong is we were deciding to send our Finnish carpenter on training. But before we did that, we decided to do some calculations. We needed to calculate how much training was going to cost us and how much it would cost us if we didn't send the person on training, if we left them unallocated. However, in that time, we were going through the calculations. The training available for AutoCAD, computer-aided design, was filled up. Other team members took it. Other teams took it. So we then had to take a more expensive training for occupational health and safety. That cost us $1,000. Not bad. We saved up. We spent over $400, so not so bad. Now, firing team members. Of course, our secret strategy, our winning strategy, was to bid 5% on the best and 10% on the second best. So sometimes we had to let go somebody. And this, of course, reduced your longevity. So this was also one of the things that we had to work on. So yes, it was a bad for us. It went wrong because our longevity score was low. However, we used our secret formula again for stakeholder satisfaction, and that helped us to bring up this number. Now we'll have Andrea, and she will take us through the decision-making process employed by our team. Andrea?
Thank you, Javier. Well, let's take a quickly look at this. Our decision-making process followed 7 basic and pretty much intuitive steps. First of all, we identify the decision. We answer basic questions like, what do we need to do for this round? What kind of managerial actions should we take? And do we need to bid on any resource for the next round? Then we gather information. How many activities do we have on the critical path for the next round? How many available resources do we have on the pool? This information was important for us because we can predict how many resources other groups will assign to their activities. Then we identify alternatives. What if we assign only one high-skill resource to the activity? What if we assign 2 high-skill resources? What if we assign 1 high-skill resource along with 1 average skill resource? What if we take resources from different categories and we assign both together? Then we weigh the evidence. It was like a cost-effective analysis. For example, in terms of cost, it's better to have only 1 resource assigned to 1 task. But in terms of time, this is not the best choice. So we need to prioritize what was our main thing for each round. Then we chose among alternatives. All the ideas, all the decisions were put to vote. All team members were encouraged to participate openly. And finally, we took action. Taking action in this context means just go and put the information on the Sim4 projects platform. And finally, review the decisions. At the moment of submissions, all the eyes on the screen to make sure the decision was correct in Sim4 projects platform. These steps were followed in every single round. However, generally speaking, we focus on the goals all the time, and we consider risk and environmental factors. By risk, we mean, what if other teams are bidding higher on the resources that we wanted? And by environmental factors, I don't know if you guys realize that, for example, the rough carpenter increased their average rate in different rounds. They were cheaper in the round number 4, and then in round number 8, if you wanted to bid on a rough carpenter, the standard rates were higher. Finally, consensus. As we have said, we got two things: a winning formula that was already explained and a secret formula for the stakeholder satisfaction. The winning formula was already explained, and the secret formula is going to keep secret. We are not going to reveal, at least not for free. So let's see now what happened with the decision-making process in terms of gut feelings and reason.
Basically, our decision approach was based in which information was available, and if that information was accurate and detailed enough to make a decision about it. We use our gut feelings for the decisions, like assign a task that it was not clear enough and the description was not sufficient, or assign a task when we don't have a perfect resource match for that task. For example, the inspection task in the several rounds, we discussed, should we assign a project manager or we should assign an expert resource, so a plumber or electrician. In our case, we assigned the project manager and the resource was pretty good. Another example, a gut feeling decision, was the minimize the training was mostly based on a hunch, because we didn't see direct relation between the trainings and how it's going to improve the efficiency of the resources. In reasoning, we use the reasoning approach when we have prior data and we can analyze that data before making a decision. For example, hire the resources, fire the resources, bidding for the resources, and the managerial actions were careful planning using reasoning. We have many discussions throughout the 12 rounds in the simulation, but the most repetitive and difficult discussion for us were these two. First, should we use the free managerial actions to improve the efficiency of the team in the long term? These managerial actions were one-on-one chat, disciplinary actions. Even though we never used them, we discussed about it in every round. And at the end, we decided not to use with the resources. The second one was how we spend the budget. We have to find a balance between spending 20% above of the standard rate to reach the best resources for the critical path